This is my EJ9 Honda Civic and it's making some weird noises. I swear it's louder than that in person. To me, it sounded like the release bearing on the clutch had gone, as it grumbled whenever the clutch was released, despite being told by the previous owner it recently had a new clutch. I should have listened. Ben and I tackled the grueling task of replacing the clutch in his garage on our backs, only to find out that I'd ordered the wrong clutch. Turns out the Civic has an uprated D16 clutch, therefore bigger in diameter. We replaced the release bearing anyway as the noise was driving me nuts, but upon first startup the noise was still there. I did some research and found that the input shaft bearing is a common weakness on the S20 gearboxes. Yep, a gearbox rebuild was incoming. Fortunately, I have some great friends with great knowledge, so Yayan, for some strange reason, offered to do the rebuild for me. Rather than go for a standard rebuild, I got a bit carried away and ordered a full carbon Synchro kit, uprated M factory diff bearings, along with a shifter rebuild kit, a short shift lever and polybushes for the gear linkage to eliminate some of the slop in the linkage. I began stripping the gearbox off for the second time. Fortunately, this time I had access to a ramp. As far as gearboxes go, this really wasn't too bad to remove. As far as the upgrades went, I started with the gear linkages. These are very simple to access and remove on these Civics. A few bolts hold the linkage to the body, and because the gearbox was already out, they came out peacefully. There are polybushes that go either end of the linkage. The one end was a real pain, but not too bad overall. The short shift and shifter rebuild was next. This simply involved renewing the dust cover and ball bush, along with some fresh grease. While the car was up in the air, I also threw on some new inner and outer tie rods. I was really surprised how worn the inners were. These are often overlooked. Let's move on to the gearbox. So I've managed to strip the box out of the Civic, but unfortunately that is the extent of my knowledge, so I had to find someone willing to take on the challenge of rebuilding the box. So that's why we're down here with Yayan. Mainly because he's the only crazy person to take on this project. But the thing that gave me a lot of confidence, yes, you guys would have seen this before. We've had this on the channel. I adore this thing. This is his B18C4. It is an EJ9 as well, isn't it, dude? EJ9? It was once upon a time, yep, an EJ9. So, we've been at it about 3 minutes already. We've already had our first casualty of a tool.
A good ratchet, that is.
Whoops. In case you hadn't guessed by now, gearboxes are very complex items, so I was ready to learn. The first step is to pretty much remove anything attached to the gearbox itself, i.e. reverse switch, earth straps, any external brackets, etc. Some can be a bit stubborn. Then it's a case of removing all the bolts to split the bell housing. Then comes the exciting / scary part, removing the casing. Seeing the gear sets exposed like this is pretty fascinating. Right, so obviously a big step at the moment. The casing is off. Now, Yayan, first of all, thank you so much, man, for being on camera. Like I said, he agreed to do this gearbox with me, and obviously me being me, I asked if I could throw a camera in his face. So I find this absolutely fascinating, guys, and I know there are a lot of you out there here that will not have seen the inside of a gearbox. Much like me, I understand the general principle, but thankfully we've got intelligent people like Yayan. So can you break down just in essence for the dummies like me what we're looking at here, because this is pretty cool.
Basically, input shaft on this side, and then which gets all the drive from the engine.
Yeah.
And then you've got all your shift forks by here down, so altering the shift fork, which is tucked down by there, sorry.
Yep.
And then you've got all the gubbins in that go up behind the diff, and then depending on which gear you select down, then gives.
That's just nuts, because you said obviously that is the diff itself.
So
that's, so that is essentially you changing gear from bloop, bloop, from the gear shift. That's amazing. Like, it is obviously harder, guys, when you haven't got a shifter attached to it, but wow. Yeah, so like I said, guys, so from that is essentially a shifter when you're changing gear. It links to the shifter. I just find that fascinating. I know to you this is probably normal by now, but I find this amazing. And the thing that I found interesting, this is an S20 box, like I said, out of an imported Del Sol. Now, you jumped on this because you thought, oh, you've rebuilt one of these recently, but you said comparing it to yours, which is a B series, is it the S4C you've got in yours?
The S4C box, yeah. But yeah, basically it's way different. All the shift forks are on this side, your reverse idler pulleys up by here. And then you haven't got so much of the gubbins then that run down behind the diff. It all sits on top.
That's amazing, because we were saying off camera that you'd think being a Honda and closely related Hondas, you'd think they'd be very similar, but you're actually saying they're quite different.
A fair bit different, like, so.
But we're still here and he hasn't told me to go away yet, so we'll get stuck in. I told you gearboxes were complicated. I then asked Yayan about reverse gears, as I know they are very different to the forward gears.
When you flick it up.
Yeah.
Now that's what engages your reverse gear, so that's what that one is.
Ah, right. Again, guys, this fascinated me. So we've run through all the gears and the diff, but what Ian was just explaining, that is basically your reverse gear.
Yeah. So essentially when you click it in, it slots up, gets the drive from the small tooth on this side down by here.
Of course, from the input, yeah.
Yeah, and then you were the one then locking the both shafts together then via this. So then that's what gives you...
Yeah, that's amazing,
That's what
man.
gives you reverse.
I'm so glad we get to do it, and I'm so glad I get to explain with you guys as well, because this is all new for me. One thing I did know, as you'll notice from there, guys, you've got the... Yeah, the slanted gear, there is a word for it, we can't think of it now. But the reason your reverse gear is noisy and sounds like it's whining is because it's essentially a straight cut design. Nerdy stuff! Next up is removing the detent springs, which apply pressure to the shifter fork, ensuring the gear selector stays in gear, giving you that satisfying click when you go into gear. It was then time to remove the gear sets as a whole. Pretty crazy to see in person. Money shot. Next really important step, as you can see, the gearbox as a whole has been removed from everything else, and that is rather scary to see, so I'm glad you are putting it back together. But like we said, I find this amazing that is your gearbox. That is where all your drive comes from. That is where all the magic happens. And yes, if you are wondering, I did look like a bit of a weirdo dipping my synchros in oil, but we'll get onto that when we fitted them. Yeah, and then moved on to removing the differential.
Less than what's in mine, especially like with our LSD I put in, all of our gubbins is just full of doobly watts.
The technical term. Yeah, so guys, as you can see, this is the diff, and it's crazy, like Ian was just saying. Now, I'm familiar with diffs, but Ian said that is an incredibly basic diff, because in these, some of them did come with LSDs or limited slip differentials. This one didn't, and obviously in Ian's when he has now got an LSD, and it's just crazy to see. The scary thing you don't do, I brought you a whole gearbox, and now this is what you're giving me at the moment.
I was putting back together, but there's a problem.
Yeah, so yeah, that's going to be interesting. After some more stripping of the internals, I was curious to hear how the input shaft bearing actually sounded. Definitely sounds a bit rough. Now, believe it or not, folks, I believe this is what the issue was the whole time. That noise I was getting from the box that I thought was the release bearing, I believe to be the input shaft bearing, because like you said, it sounded pretty rough, didn't it, just from rotating it?
It does sound a bit rough, so we'll compare it to the other ones a bit later on. That's a good point,
yeah. Because it is, the research I've been doing, it is apparently a common thing. I don't know if it's a common thing on Hondas, but it was a common thing on these boxes apparently, so. With the input shaft bearing removed, it was time to get the output shaft bearing out. And what a pain that was. Ian resorted to pliers, fire, and even swearing at it.
In mine, it was a of nasties.
But eventually, it came out. And with that bearing finally coming out, that is the output shaft bearing, and we've got the input shaft bearing there. Thanks to Ian's ingenuity. I just thought, on this video, we're probably making this look very easy, but there's a lot of ingenuity going on, adapting tools, and a few swear words, which we won't put on camera. But no, that's this side of the box stripped. We've got the case in there, there is a bearing in there we need to get out. No way did that just come out that easy.
Bearing out.
Ah, well, that was a lot easier than those ones, wasn't it?
We like it when we have everyone.
That's some skill, fair play.
Clean time now.
Is that what it is next, is it?
Clean everything down now. Clean all the box out just so we haven't got to mess around with it.
Yeah, because I don't want to be doing this again. And I'm sure you don't want to be doing this to me again either, so yeah, let's get cleaning. We gave the gearbox a good clean and removed the old diff seals. It was then time to split the gear sets apart, ready to fit the upgraded carbon synchros. This is the part that blew my mind. Once the gear sets were separated, Ian then began stripping each gear down individually, pulling the synchros out. I have no idea how he remembers the order of these things, but he kept claiming it's pretty straightforward.
If you have a look inside your carbon synchros, you've got black material.
I did notice, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the carbon synchro upgrade bit.
Okay.
So essentially, without the gear engaged, it's essentially quite freewheeling on there.
Yeah.
But then as soon as the clutch fork starts putting pressure on that,
right, okay.
So there is a little bit of slip there, but that's what your synchro is doing then, is slowing the next gear down until all of them line up, and then the shift fork dinks into the next gear, and
Yeah.
that's where it locks in the drive.
That's insane, because I've always heard the synchros obviously, yeah, slow down or basically get the speeds more matched. That's incredible.
So that's how it works, because you can see there's like a tapered surface on there.
Yeah.
It's only ever so slightly, but there's a slight tapered surface on there. So it's when the gear's not selecting, there's no pressure.
Yeah.
It's just free spinning. But then as soon as you start to squeeze,
yeah, that's insane.
Oh,
okay. It's good to see a physical representation of it.
Yeah, you understand it then.
And then what Yayan was on about, I wonder if I can dig one of these out. So these are the upgraded synchros we've got here. Hopefully I don't make a mess. But the carbon upgrade bits Yayan was referring to, if you look in there, yes, that's juicy looking carbon. So it's good to know that I haven't been ripped off. They are actually carbon upgrades, because they were about 4 times the freaking price. And what I've just found amazing is, not only have we had to strip the gearbox out of the car, we've then stripped the casings off the gearbox, we've then taken the gearbox out of the casings there to get these, whatever you want to call them, complete. And now Yayan has stripped all of that down from there, and you've even got the little bits that have there's so many parts to a gearbox. Like I always understand, I've always said gearboxes are like black magic, but I genuinely didn't realise, I'm finally starting to appreciate just how complex they are. And like I said, he's still smiling. I don't know, knowing all this is going to go back together. Yeah, you got my respect, dude. The rebuild of the gear set is essentially the opposite of the strip down, as the upgraded parts are a direct replacement. Still amazes me. With the new input and output shaft bearings installed, it was now time to move on to the diff bearings. These were also an absolute pain to get off, so Yayan once again had to resort to heat. That is the diff rebuilt. I have gone for the M factory uprated diff bearings, because once again, like I said from the start, if I'm doing this, I'm hoping to only do this once. So we're doing it all properly. And Yayan said the magic words. We are at that point now, so it is reassembling now, is it?
Chuck it all back in now, yeah.
And hope for the best. We're going to keep everything crossed. The D10 springs were next to go back in. I did order uprated D10 springs, but decided against putting them in, as I thought they may be too aggressive for daily driving. The gear sets then went back in, casings on, and that was job done. So after all that hard work, was it worth it? I mean, I'm saying listen to it, you won't be able to hear it, but I can confirm that annoying grumbling noise has certainly gone. So I do believe the input shaft bearing was the issue. And as far as the gearbox feel goes, obviously I have changed a lot, we've upgraded a lot. It now does very much slot into gear, as you would expect from a fresh rebuild. The only thing is, there is a lot of slop in the gear when it's in gear. This is what I was referring to when I said about the slop in gear. So I can put it into third there, and yeah, you'd swear that was still in neutral, even in neutral there. And it does make selecting first a bit more difficult on times. But I think I've got what I believe is the solution for this. That was something that the previous owner didn't really do properly, but that's no problem at all. I've got the part. I will do that in a later update video. I suppose the only issue is now, with everything being as freshly rebuilt as it is, Yayan has strongly advised that I take it easy for about 500 miles, which, let me assure you, is not easy in a Civic, because they certainly encourage you to go nuts. But I will do that, all the hard work I am not going to ruin. So I've even ordered some more genuine genuine Honda gearbox fluid, because that's what was recommended. And I forgot to mention, I did actually replace the slave cylinder and the master cylinder as well. So everything to do pretty much with the gearbox side of it has been replaced, because I just want it working. Now, obviously, once again, as Kenny and I always say, we come up with some crazy ideas for content for you guys, and a lot of it would not be possible without your support. So obviously, I need to say a massive thank you to Ben. As always, he is always looking out for me. Any way you can help, he will. So a massive thanks to him for giving up one of his, well, 2 of his evenings actually, getting the clutch out on our backs in his garage. And then obviously Yayan for agreeing to take on the job, which was a massive job, and letting me film, which I found absolutely fascinating. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope it came across just how complex gearboxes are and just how skilled Yayan is. And I need to say thank you to Malik and Nick, who actually stayed on with me after hours to get the gearbox back in on what should have been a simple job. It turned out to be a bit of a pain in the backside, but they both persevered with me to get it stuck in. And obviously a massive thank you to Georgia, who always sticks by me through all my shenanigans. She even came down to help with the gearbox as well. The amount of time everything takes, and she's just a saint. She's got the patience of a saint as well. And also finally, a massive thank you to you guys for your support and for simply watching this video. Got a few more things in mind with this. I haven't even done a proper drive in this because it hasn't been driving well enough for me to batter the hell out of it since I've owned it. But I will be doing a bit more content on this, as I know a few of you guys love this thing. So for now, thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. I have no idea why I've come down these crashy lanes.